Okay. All right, this is a meeting of the POCD Subcommittee meeting of the Planning Commission, March 21st, 2024, 7 o'clock. We are in room 133 of Brookfield Town Hall. There are 4 members of this particular subcommittee. 3 of us are here, myself, Scott Dale, Mark Lowengart, and August Stepniak. Courtney Knopp is not yet here. We are expecting her, though, to arrive at some point shortly. What we can do, I think, at this point, if you guys have had a chance to review the minutes of the last meeting, and let me know if there's anything we need to update in any way. Have you guys had a chance to review this prior to this?
Yeah, I looked at the email that was sent out.
All right.
And looks good to me.
How about you? Do you feel there's anything that we need to change, or are we good?
It's all good.
All right.
So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the February 15th meeting.
Okay.
I second.
Okay. All right. All yeses, ayes?
Aye.
Yeah. No nays, no otherwise. So we got 3-0 there. All right. So now we're on to our workshop. I think you guys have been working on looking at the existing POCD.
Yes.
Maybe can either of you maybe summarize where you are,
Okay, so.
or what you may have encountered?
Yes. So, Courtney divvied up the POCD into 3 sections.
Mm-hmm.
So my section pertained to kind of like it ended with the vision statement. So achieving the vision, community character, natural resources, open space, and protecting historical resources.
Okay.
Then Courtney's had to do with development and
Economic development?
yeah,
Mhm.
like infrastructure, I
Yeah.
think.
Right. Mhm.
And then you had transportation.
Town facilities, transportation, infrastructure, and then public utilities and services. And so far, what I've worked on was I've started to compile some resources for and like what are the areas that we should look at, and I'm just comparing it to both the 2015 plan and then also some of the other towns' plans, just to see if there were any like differences or anything that like I liked about other towns' plans that maybe wasn't included in the plan from 10 years ago, or not yet 10 years ago, but when this is done it'll be 10 years. And I'm just trying to see if there's anything that we should include that we didn't include in the past. And so far I've just been categorizing like the different things that should be touched on within my section. And so like when it comes to like utilities and public works, I'm looking at like how does like water and sewer come into play? How does street maintenance come into play? How does lampposts throughout the town for lighting intersections how does that come into play? And then also for transportation, how do the roads in town, how are they, like what needs to be done with them? Areas where sidewalks can be improved or even added, maybe adding crosswalks, taking a look at proposals in the future for greenway extensions, or how to maintain the town's existing trails. For parking, is there adequate parking throughout the town? And then, also EV charging came up as a discussion, so I'm looking at that as well. And then also other methods of transportation, for example, looking at the existing bus transportation infrastructure that the town has, and then also the potential, since the state has discussed in the past plans for rail extensions to Brookfield and ultimately New Milford, how would that come into play? I know that that was mentioned in previous POCD plans.
Right.
What would that space have to look like, and like where would the station potentially be located? And I think that's something that, considering that there has been more infrastructure investment, the state could potentially want to move forward with that in the coming decade.
Mhm.
So we should look at how would that play into the town center district and how would it look.
Mhm.
And then also for the facilities, what will the plan be for what over the next decade, what the town's facilities will look like? For example, there's been discussion about expanding the police station. We have Center School, which there's a whole committee that's discussing that right now. What will Center School look like, since that building's empty? And then if they end up, say, potentially moving the library there, what will that building look like?
Mhm.
So I think these are all things that factor into the grand plan for the town.
Did I guess in your review, were you looking at, I guess, what the plan was when it was developed in 2015, and was it successful? In other words,
Uh-huh.
they had there's many goals and ambitions. Were they realistic? Were there's anywhere we fell short on, and are you able to draw any conclusions as to the reasons why they may be?
There were aspects of that I think definitely were successful. Like for example, the Federal Road project that was just completed.
Right.
There were mentions of that in the plan on how to improve pedestrian safety
Mhm.
and traffic flow throughout that corridor. And there were areas where there are still discussions going on about like what the town will look like in the future with, say, a library, for example,
Mhm.
and how does that factor into the POCD? But I think it's mixed. I think that there were aspects of it that were successful, and I think there are areas where I wouldn't necessarily say there was a failure, but things change over time.
Right.
You have to look at it from like a dynamic perspective, and how there are unknowns in the future that we have to be able to account for. So I think overall the plan did a good job at addressing the immediate concerns of conservation. But I think that there are areas like, the town's changed quite a bit over the past decade.
Mhm.
And I think that the plan needs to reflect the changes.
Right. Right. Mhm. How about you and the things that you looked at?
Okay, so I read the current 2015 plan.
Mhm.
Um, there needs to be, in my opinion, just a lot of like updates.
Mhm.
I looked at the goals that they had at that time, and I feel that some of the goals have not been met.
Right.
Mhm.
Also, this plan talks about zoning, like the zoning, makes a reference to a zoning, like zoning regulations.
Right.
It talks about like clean water, and I know there has been studies of Lake Candlewood that we could use.
Mhm.
Those were done by, I think, third-party services that we could like use to update some of the sections here.
Mhm.
But I found that this needs to be reviewed in conjunction with other documents, like
Mhm.
from the zoning commission, and like it's not like a standalone
Okay. Yeah.
document.
Mhm.
What else? Some of my questions were, we talked about achieving the vision. That statement, I think, needs to be updated.
Sure, okay.
Like, what is it that we want as a town. Then it talks about open space, and I think given the development and everything, I think our open space is becoming like a limited resource.
Mm-hmm.
So that definitely has to be addressed. What else? There was a reference to a architectural board. So I actually like tried to figure out like what happened to it. So
Yeah.
it was actually dismantled. And I think it's good to have an architectural board because, like for example, if you drive by towns in like any European city, like each town has like a little character, and like
Mhm.
even if you go to like
Yep.
New Canaan or like Richfield, you have like that
Yeah.
sense of like town sense,
Mhm.
you know, and I don't think we're lacking in that because we need something in place. So our like if it's like our municipal like center district,
Yeah.
right? Like all buildings should look alike. You know what I mean? Like same roof pitch and kind of
There should be
same
some sort of strategy behind it,
style.
right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
I think we're missing a lot of that. I think if we had that,
Mhm.
I think it would be different.
That's a good point. Yeah.
No,
Yes.
one question I have is the town center, the historic district around like where the congregational church is.
Yeah.
Is that since that's a historic area, is there an existing board that
Yeah.
governs?
Oh, there is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So since the town center district is designated as its own district, would it be a similar process for establishing like a architect if we decided to go through with that?
That I don't know. We'd have to
It's
find
something
out what
we'd have
that
to
would
look
be.
into.
And what that would, what would the implications be as well? If you're trying to develop, if you are trying to encourage development too, are you limiting certain types of growth by doing that? So I guess you gotta balance that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Mhm.
Just for the town center district, there is a large section, I don't know how familiar you are with the zoning regulations on
Mhm.
design standards, just
Right.
mainly for the town center district, so we
Mhm.
do have them
Yeah.
look, similar. I know they did disband the architectural
Mhm.
design board,
That came up when our whole discussion about number of stories and such,
Came
yeah,
up.
yeah.
In
Mhm.
order to, so you would like to, possibly put in a suggestion that that would be something to be recreated, because
Not, I mean, I think it's something that we could review before we make any suggestions. But do you know why it was disbanded? Did they feel it was a redundancy to the existing
I would
ordinance?
have to do a little bit more homework, I believe, because we also have the architectural review board, there's the municipal building, like, there's a lot of little subsets
Wait,
of things.
But we don't have an architectural review board at
We
the
don't
moment.
anymore, no.
Right, yeah.
But I think that the whole idea, and I could be wrong, so I'm hesitant to speak,
Yeah.
was when they put it into the zoning regulations, when the zoning regulations were updated, that they put in certain design
Right.
standards with the idea based off of this POCD, that sense of place was going to be the town center district, where they
Mhm.
wanted everything to have that
New
feel
England
to it.
feel, yeah, yeah.
And
Mhm.
whether or not they were successful in that,
Mhm.
that's
Yep.
to be determined, I guess, but that's why I don't think and, because it's kind of ruled to a certain extent by the zoning regulations.
Mm.
Okay.
There are design standards in many things, not in all things.
I think, but I can kind of understand, like, those standards are really more like, how do you build something, you know? Is it also taken into account, I guess, more the aesthetics?
standards,
The
yeah.
aesthetics,
Mhm.
right?
Which it's not uncommon for other towns
Yeah.
to have. My previous town had an architectural review board, which is probably why I'm using that term often instead
Right.
of design review team or whatever.
Right.
We do have a design review team, but again, it's more internal staff purposes, not necessarily for aesthetics. The only real district that has design standards in our zoning regulations is the town center district.
Yeah.
As far as everything else.
That makes some sense, yeah, yeah.
It's kind of
Mhm.
based off of the
Yeah.
zoning commission. I mean, there's certain
Mhm.
things that I'm sure would not pass as far as designs, and most of the time,
Right.
you can kind of have a conversation with the applicants, like, you
Mhm.
might wanna,
Well, it's a matter of like the town, it's Four Corners to me still, but still, it's, that's the one area where I think there was some desire to build it into something, right? You know,
Mhm.
based on a certain vision that everybody had, right? So that's why it makes some sense to have something like that still in place perhaps,
it can be
for
helpful.
that, if we feel there's a need to, yeah.
Then we have the sections on like natural resources and
Mhm.
species that live around here and
Mhm.
things like that. So we have to confirm if these creatures are still around, and then
Most of them are in my backyard.
yeah, like little things. I also we have a lot of these strategies like listed, and then you have to go through each strategy. And as I feel like a lot of these strategies could be like made combined, or
Mhm.
I don't know, like
Mhm.
reworded into something else.
Yeah.
I think it's too much minutia in some of these things.
Mhm.
Still River Greenway, we know that's growing.
Yep.
So we can expand that section here.
Mhm.
And then I was also thinking about, money, because depending on like what our financial resources are, that's really what's gonna drive the doing of all of this.
Oh, the cost for this? Yeah,
Yeah.
how do you pay for
Yeah, because
these
I looked at
ambitions?
the plan, like Richfield's plan.
Mhm.
They talk
Mhm.
about a lot about sustainability and
Yeah.
things like that, and
Mhm.
they use like different wording, and
Mhm.
it's like their plan is definitely like modernized and
Mhm.
things like that.
That was one that I noted, like the first time I looked at a couple other towns' plans, is that they all had sustainability, at least the ones that I had picked up. And
Yeah.
that's not
Mhm.
something that we don't have specifically in
Yeah.
our plan right now.
Mhm.
Um, that's it. The open space, that's gonna be a big question,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
because I,
Do you feel that whatever ambitions and goals we had in that plan, were they met at all?
no,
Yeah.
I don't think so,
Mhm.
no.
It's something I noted too when I saw it was the 2012, I think, plan for the town, the town center, Four Corners, is that when I looked at some of the maps and some of the things that they had envisioned at the time, it looked like there was more open space
Yeah.
that was part of that plan. There's a lot of that has now been taken by other kind of development now,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
mhm.
The only thing that like really transpired, like that became a reality out of this, is the Still River,
Right.
the Still River
Mhm.
Yep.
Greenway.
Mhm.
So yeah, well, maybe we can put some of that stuff into the future,
Mhm.
depending on how things will fall,
Yeah.
Mhm.
how
Mhm.
everything is gonna fall into place.
Okay.
you
Anything else that you uncovered?
Uh, They talk about the Green Belt Trail Workshop. So
Mhm.
I said, okay, I have to do research on this. We don't have one of those anymore.
Okay.
Um, they talk about dog park.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. There was a vote on that a long time ago, but it was voted down for it to go by the Happy Landings parking lot. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, that obviously didn't happen. Uh, so they give like a history of the Gurski farm,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and I don't know if that's like appropriate place for that here. Like it goes into a detail, like what happened with each building and
Oh, the history of it and why it's
yeah,
there.
yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
So rather than a plan, it's sort of a look back, perhaps?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then there was a mention of design guidelines and standards. So this document is somewhere, that we have to review. I think that's it. Oh, they talk about, Farm Fest.
Okay, yep.
I don't think we have Farm Fest.
I think I've been to one. I don't
So-
remember when that was, but
Not
Gursky,
anymore.
right?
So it used to be at Gursky.
Yeah,
And it stopped a couple of years ago,
okay.
so.
I was at one, okay,
You
yeah.
probably were.
So-
Probably good time.
Yeah.
So yeah, we would have to like update this with like the current town events and
Mhm.
maybe come up with some other traditions.
What is it, block
Farmers
party?
market, the block party would be a great one, the
Yeah.
farmers market, I don't know if
Farmers
that's
market,
in
yeah.
there. I don't think I remember seeing a reference.
I don't
to
think that's,
POCD.
I think that started certainly after this plan was developed,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
I could speak a little bit about Gursky. There was a time, and I don't know if you've seen the document, there was a major study done on what they wanted done at Gursky and what the
Mhm.
like, I think it was Malone and McBroom, I can't remember who actually did it. And there was community meetings as well, there was some outreach, kind of polled the community, like, do you wanna see ball fields there? Do you
Mm.
wanna see, and they came up with a whole developmental plan
Yeah.
on rehabbing Gursky, so that could be why the history is in here.
Mm.
It was based off of a grant, which
Yeah.
then
Mhm.
is no longer in place, and I think after the grant fell through, that the whole kind of plan
Mhm.
kind of, but that's might be why it took up such this big section, because they went far enough to do a big study just on that property and utilizing the best uses for the Gursky homestead.
Right.
It'd be interesting to see.
Well, maybe one day.
You know,
Just to give you a little aside, about 25 years ago, that was proposed to be a golf course. A lot of talk, yeah, believe it or not.
Mhm.
Wow.
Look,
Really?
yeah,
Makes sense in some
golf
ways,
course,
yeah.
Planning commission got very involved,
Mm.
the golfers.
Well, we do seem to like our hay fields.
Yeah.
I like
no
those
moment.
too. Of course, this talks about this is like from the back of the plan,
Mhm.
like some of the goals, and like how to achieve them. So encourage developers to build housing
Mhm.
that is affordable to young families and young professionals. Construct a new library. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hello?
You know, like things like that.
Okay.
That's all I had to.
And then,
Do you have anything else you wanna cover?
yeah, well, no, one thing that I
Mhm.
spent a little bit of extra time reviewing was
Oh, no worries. I am just
you know, the
like
mentions
all over the
of
place.
like local road issues, and then local like just looking at the accidents and how they're reported within the old POCD.
Mhm.
And it does discuss like certain intersections that have area that could definitely be improved. Like one that stood out to me was the Long Meadow and Wisconsin intersection.
Yeah,
That one
I
could
know that one well.
Mm-hmm. And I think that there are definitely some intersections that I think there could be more done to, especially for lighting. I know that some intersections, especially the higher traffic intersections in Brookfield, have a lamppost shining on them,
Mhm.
so that at night there's better visibility. But most of them, not all of them, but a lot of them do seem to be on the state roads. So I assume they're
Right.
managed by the state. And I wonder if there's like a way we could get like almost like a map or a database of the locations of the town managed streetlights, so that we could see like, okay, these intersections are
Mhm.
lit at night, and you know, these ones aren't, and then we can also compare that to the traffic data or the
Right.
accident data and say, look, there were a lot of accidents at this intersection, maybe, and it seems like they happen, say, in the evening.
Right.
Maybe it would be a good idea to add a light there, and that could potentially we could see improvement there.
Mhm. That's a good thought.
And then another intersection that I've been thinking a lot about is You know, we've been talking about Happy Landings. Happy Landings is very close to Wiskaner Middle School,
Mhm.
and it's within very reasonable walking distance. The only problem is that you have a very busy state road
Yes.
dividing the two, and it's really, and then that's a very accident-prone intersection as well, where Wiskaner meets, I think Route 25.
Mhm.
Yeah, Route 25. Yeah, and I was thinking this would obviously require coordination with the state, but possibly some sort of controlled device at that intersection, and maybe a crosswalk with a sidewalk that connects Wiskaner to the entrance to Happy Landing. So I'm thinking for recreation, or like, for example, when I was in high school, I did cross country, and I also, even when I was in middle school, I did cross country, and we would run around Wiskaner.
Yeah.
And you know, there's this great park with all of these fields. That would be a perfect location.
Instead of running around the back with a baseball field.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have this great park
Yeah.
within walking distance to the school. The only issue is
Mhm.
crossing that one road. So I
Right.
think that's something we should look at. How can we expand access for outdoor activities for Wiskaner students?
Mhm. That's a good thought.
Mhm.
Yeah. We were just, hello.
Hi.
So, we did the minutes, and then,
Oh, you did?
and then, Mark and Naga were just reviewing some things that they had covered.
Great.
You know, as they were looking at the different documents, so, I don't know if you like to carry on, anything on your side as
Sure,
for what
yeah.
you reviewed?
I've been taking a look at to begin with, at the housing study and the economic development study, and just trying to pull some updates from there. But then, and starting to do that, but then we had spoken at the last meeting about possibly like reaching out to some of the commissions that are identified as implementation leads on these different measures. So you had suggested drafting an email. So I brought that.
Okay.
So that we could take a look at it.
Sure.
Yeah, anyhow. And then I also updated this again.
Okay,
Based
great.
on the discussion we had at the meeting
A
a couple
more
weeks ago.
ambitious schedule?
Yeah, trying to wrap everything up
Right.
before
Mhm.
the melding of the zoning and the planning commissions.
Okay.
So, do you have a preference about which? I think maybe this one's the
Yeah,
easier.
let's start
'cause
with
I
that.
think it's hopefully
Mhm.
hopefully I got it all this time. Let's see
Mhm.
here. Do you mind passing? Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
And the main, thank you. The main change was just pulling back, as I just said, from, I think the last version it's going through the summer of 2026, so now scaling that back to wrap up in October, basically get the thing
Mhm.
approved and submitted to the state by October. So
Yep.
working backwards from that, I basically shaved a little bit of time. I had been quite liberal with the amount of time I felt like I was giving each piece, just because I thought we had more time to work with. So
Mhm.
basically I shaved back the writing phase. That's where I had felt like I had really added extra padding. So I think like giving us 4 months to basically like wrap things up rather than 5 months actually, like
Mhm.
total, but to write and wrap it up and then get that submitted to WestCog and to the Board of Select people. And so that, I think I took a month or two off there, and then I also shaved a month or so off of the community outreach and engagement. I mean, it felt a little like bad to cut that, but I think we can be efficient and
Mhm.
do a lot in 3, well, I mean, we're still giving ourselves several months here, but in particular, like around the, community workshops and visioning, I don't think we really need, 3 months for all of, like for visioning, so I tried to compress that a little bit and just overlap things a bit where I realized like we could be doing things concurrently.
Yeah.
And so that gave us back some time.
Mhm.
And I think I might have taken a month off the part 2, the established community outreach. So in the next few months, I'm hoping that we'll be able to sit down with some of the templates and workbooks that I've described around public participation and kind of use this space to do some of that, and so I just compressed that a little bit. And that basically like bought us back the 5 or 6 months that I had put in there. So that was the main change. And the last thing I'll just note, and I've said this before, is like the last pieces, in particular if you see under the notes where there are requirements about how, you know, much time something needs to be submitted or posted prior to the meeting where, the public meeting, that's where I kind of, you know, was working off of those dates. So, I think I might have given us, I think in my brain I was thinking if they said like you must give the public at least 35 days to review the plan, but I
Right.
think we actually could give, if we wanted to, could give them a little bit more time, because I think a month is really not a ton of time for, you know, if we want folks to read it carefully and give feedback. So if we have a little, you know, we have a couple months there maybe to work with and still be able to meet those deadlines. So that's kind of where I'm at.
At that
Yeah.
point, if we do that and if there are updates to be made, what is the timeline then? Is a reset? I can't recall
Well,
that.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
I don't recall. Do you know if?
I'm not quite sure what the question
The-
was, I'm sorry, I missed it.
Sorry,
Okay, yeah.
at the point where this is written and then we have to, then
Do the
we.
public.
Do the public, notice and their feedback,
Okay.
right? And then if at that point, then there is a revision to be made, maybe as a result of that feedback. Does that reset the clock, or are you aware of the calendar?
So it won't reset the clock, and if
Yeah.
it's substantively changed the plan itself, because your public hearing is an adoption of this
Yeah.
plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, if it changes a lot to the point where the
Right, if it's
revision-
major, then, yeah.
We
yeah.
might have if it's
Yep.
minor tweaks,
Yeah.
and what
Mhm.
have you,
No.
a way to get around that would be to have a public meeting
Mhm.
with the draft
Right.
before actually noticing the public hearing, putting it on the agenda and opening public comment.
So
Okay.
like after the draft has been released, then we have a public meeting that's not the formal
That's not the
adoption
formal,
meeting.
but to allow
Mhm.
people to give feedback on the draft,
Right.
Mhm.
maybe just a suggestion on how you can do it without
Yeah.
starting your time clock
Yep.
and then running out.
Okay,
Okay.
that's a good idea. Okay, let me make a note of that.
The piece I'm curious about is the community engagement and outreach
Yeah.
stuff. Maybe you could expand on that a little more. So how those timelines would work here. So basically, in April, which next.
Yeah. Yeah.
We begin to establish that.
Yep.
And then actually perform it, I guess,
Starting in September. Yeah, in my mind, I was thinking once we've done the existing conditions analysis and we'll have the stuff to do the community-wide open house, and that could kind of kickstart it, although you see up here earlier, a few months prior, like basically like launching it then and trying to
Right.
have a website presence and have some kind of, you know, interactive component there, but then doing the like face-to-face, you know, sessions in the fall, and going through the winter. I mean, I want to take advantage of the good weather, but also I think like focus groups and those sorts of things, those will all be indoors, you know, presumably, so we could use the winter for that as well.
So I guess in April through July would be kind of establishing how our approach to
Exactly.
Engaging with the community, but it would actually be taking place in September. In September, or whenever that outreach and engagement would be,
Yeah.
would that be us coming with them with at least some preliminary structure of the plan?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, in my
Okay.
mind, we've got the structure at least figured out, like the structure by the end of, like, by the middle of the summer, basically. And then that's all, and we've got the calendar of events. Everything is like done in the spring and the early summer, so that we are, like when we're launching it, yeah, we have data already, we have a structure, we have a framework, we can talk about, you know, the benchmarking of the existing plan and do a little bit of that.
And where, I think we had talked about some form of community brainstorming.
Yes.
Is that would take place in September? Or
Yeah.
I was thinking that would be earlier in the process, just to throw some ideas against the wall.
It depends on who you're talking, like, I think that we could be throwing, in my mind,
we will be
we
throwing
will
things
be
against the
throwing
wall.
things against the wall. But I think that, like, a formal community outreach process, I just think we want to really do our due diligence before we kick that off so that we can
Yeah.
do as much to, like, ensure its success as possible. And
Mm-hmm.
knowing that, you know, not many people showed up the last time around, that's going to mean, like, taking time to, like, do outreach and, you know, and have
We could do
conversations.
survey.
The-
Like, we
A piece of it could
do,
be a survey, yeah,
Mhm.
for sure.
you know, like,
Yeah, I think some of it might be like online, you know, but then we'll have some face-to-face sessions. In my mind, we might have one or several of these like visioning sessions
Mhm.
that are community-facing.
Right.
And that, I thought, you know, could happen starting in the summer after we've kicked things off with this. The reason I've pushed things back is I wanted to give us a few months to be able to do the existing conditions analysis so that we're not like going up, that when people have questions for us, we'll be able to answer them with
Mhm.
information about how things have changed maybe, or have like the data to be able to
Mm-hmm.
substantiate, you know, claims or conversations, and then really get into the more like, you know, visionary, generative stuff once we have done that and doing that in the fall.
Should
But-
we have it, I guess, should we have at least some degree of community brainstorming prior to us putting together maybe the existing conditions analysis? Like I think that's kind of what we were discussing informally is
Okay.
what did work and what did not work from the last plan.
Well, I think that's different though.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that's like the benchmarking stuff, and then the
Okay.
existing conditions in my mind is like updating all those demographics,
Mm-hmm.
updating the economic analysis, updating all the house, all that like preliminary stuff in the plan that kind of like shows the current state of the community at that time.
Mhm.
And in my mind, I'm curious to kind of like show that change over time, and just show how basically the subsequent 10 years things have shifted. I personally don't feel strongly that we need like a community visioning event before we do that stuff, because that's just
Mhm.
like technical, like, you know, just data analysis. I do, in my mind, like up here in the first part where we say build political buy-in and it's cut off, but like basically in my mind that's, well, we'll talk about the letter that I drafted in a
Mhm.
minute, but you know, we can be starting to reach out to stakeholders, you know, more strategic, you know, conversations with like some of the other commissions and stuff, and earlier, but really launch the like public meetings a little bit later. But I'm also like, you know, flexible. But I do feel like if we go up there and we don't know, you know, kind of specifically how things are changing, then sometimes those public meetings can just like devolve into
Yeah.
opinions, and we want to
Yep.
be able to like have information to be able to
Mm-hmm.
cut through some of that if we
Mhm.
need to. Not that I'm imagining it will be contentious like in a visioning session, but sometimes those questions come up and you just want to be informed. So that's
Yeah,
yeah.
I see your point.
Yeah.
I was thinking, just do we want to have input just in case there are things that people may come up with that we haven't thought of, you know?
in terms of
Well, you know, we're focusing on certain areas that may be,
Mm-hmm.
and then someone says a dog park, I don't know, whatever may be out there.
but I think that stuff, well,
You know?
but
Um,
I hear what you're saying, but I do feel like that will happen. Maybe it feels like it's too late to wait until September to have
Yeah,
some of that. But
when I looked at this,
but
that
if
was
we
sort of my
establish the
thought, yeah.
website over the summer and we have
So that
like,
will be
that can be maybe a venue where people can
Okay.
start to give their ideas, and then we can say,
Okay.
and look, we have this calendar of events coming up, and you should show up to these events and like continue, you know,
Okay.
kind of continue this conversation.
yeah.
That's my thought, but I mean,
Mhm.
I'm open. I'm totally open to what
Make a
other people think.
suggestion,
Yeah,
if you don't
please.
mind?
Yeah.
It might, I don't know if anyone got it, I think I tried to send it to everything. You could do something as simple as a survey,
Mhm.
it's like a needs assessment.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
Parks and Rec just did one
Yeah.
recently.
Right.
Not a lot, not super complicated,
Right.
but
Yeah.
just a few basic, hey, give us a ranking
Right.
of what's most important to you.
Yeah, yeah.
And the more people it goes out to town, it's not enough for it to really devolve into anything, but it gives us some numbers to
Yeah.
kind of get a feel of like,
Okay.
okay, 300 people responded and 27 of them wanted a dog park and like
Yeah.
200 wanted a ball field. Now
Right.
we know
Sure.
a little bit, you know.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and so and
Maybe that's a way to do it. yeah.
so you know, in my brain again, like in the next couple of our meetings where we're establishing this strategy and figuring out what our public participation outreach, in my brain, in my mind, like that, what you just suggested, like I was hoping that we would get like someplace like that. Like we need to have, we need to have multiple prongs basically to be reaching people. And there's no reason why all of that stuff like couldn't start sooner. But the, interactive, the charrette or the, the shared history, whatever it is that we end up doing, say like at the library or trying to bring people together and interact with each other. I just don't want to do that too soon, like before we are like informed enough to facilitate that. So
That sounds like a reasonable balanced approach, yeah.
so if if the next meeting, if we want to start to hammer out a little bit what might be that like online component, that's the low-hanging fruit, like we can get that
Yep.
started, and that can be happening while we're analyzing existing conditions and so on and so forth.
Now, do you think
Yeah.
that when we do these community surveys, do you think it would be a good idea to segment the surveys into different parts based on the topic that we're asking about? So like part one could be on, it could be on like land use, and then part two could be on infrastructure, and then part three could be on, like segment it just so people don't like inadvertently prioritize certain things over other things when they may feel that those things are equally important, and we can misinterpret how they actually feel.
So let me say what I think I'm hearing you tell me if what I'm that the survey could be like pretty comprehensive to the issue, so it's not just a single issue survey, but it would lead them through the ability to like comment on things that they might not have like prioritized, but that they have opinions about, or
So like I'm just thinking, like if you were to say compare, I don't know, two different aspects of the POCD, and you did like a ranking in terms of like someone's like the order of importance to that specific person, they might not necessarily want to rank one thing above the other, but because that's how the survey was structured, they're limited to the confines of the survey.
Gotcha.
So
I mean, I think that's an excellent point, and maybe in the next few meetings, as we're starting to hammer things out, we can start to draft those questions. And in my mind, especially if the survey might be our one shot to like reach someone, they might just like do that and then not show up to anything else. And so getting a good balance of open and closed-ended questions while also recognizing that people burn out when they're like answered. So it can't be so long that they're gonna like stop halfway through. We want a complete response, but I think thinking creatively about how do we kind of ask some interesting open-ended questions that might get them to reflect would be
Maybe we
great.
should do
Yeah.
multiple
Yeah.
surveys.
Yeah.
Well, maybe. Yeah.
To gauge,
So say more about what we do.
So like for
Yeah.
example, the segments that you mentioned,
Mhm.
like we can have a survey on land use, and then we can have a survey on natural resources and open space and infrastructure and
Yep.
stuff like that, just like separate ones.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's like a short one that's got a little bit of several things that just gets people onto our website, and then if they're like they really want to like say more about Parks and Rec or what have you, then there could be more targeted questions. But I don't know if we sent out a list of like here's our like 8 surveys, if they would fill them all out.
Well,
like
no,
that,
we would
right?
have to
Integrate
space them out.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah. Yeah, that's something to think about. Yeah, I think let's talk more about it, and the website can also, like if we end up having one, can be a good avenue, so we can have like pages, Parks and Rec and housing in there, then we can have these links and, but yeah, no, I think the timing and just trying to like get lots of good information but not overwhelm people so that they are like, I can't deal with this, and then they don't show up.
So how
yeah.
soon would we want to put that out?
Well, I mean, I
How do
think
we
I
get
had
there?
said,
How do we get
I think I had said the website and the online tools, we were talking about like starting sometime like early summer, but we might be ready, we might be ready to do that earlier. But I think that we do want to, before we start talking about all the individual pieces, I do want to have like a broader conversation about what's our overall like strategy for outreach, that we just know these are all the pieces and now we can start to like.
The one thing I'm
roll
thinking
them
there
out,
is that probably best to do so before June,
Okay.
before people are off on
Off on
doing
break.
what
Okay.
they're doing for summer.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that could be moved up a little bit, sure. Yeah, we'll just need to
Which
use,
isn't that
we'll just
far-
need to
which
use,
isn't
yeah,
that,
no, it's not.
far
We'll just
away.
need to use these meetings,
Yeah.
to hammer that stuff out, and there's
Yeah.
no reason why I don't think we couldn't get there, certainly. Yeah. One other thing, since we're just like looking at this, section, and maybe this is a question for Laura, I'm not sure. I just don't I don't know how it works if, say, like the commission wants to send out a postcard, like to everyone or something like that. Do we have to pay for postage as a governmental entity or? Yeah,
Yes,
okay,
we do.
yeah, okay, I wanted to just make sure, yeah.
There's an interest, and I'm really trying to figure out what happens when we hammer out our budget, because as I was talking about, I tried to put away money for the POCD and for a consultant, for things that we need to
Yeah.
do, because as a commission, we don't normally have a budget.
Yeah, I don't
You know?
recall ever voting on a budget for
Yeah.
the planning, yeah.
So, it would normally go through the land use office is probably the easiest
Okay.
way to do it. I would try to stick to more, electronic if at all possible.
Okay.
Or paper surveys. A lot of towns do the option of.
I was thinking like a postcard with like a QR code, like something that's like a little
You're
bit.
talking high tech now.
I know. I mean, there are lots of websites that can make them pretty
Yes.
for us. I'm not a graphic designer, but like just as a way to like get something in front of people that's not spam. Yeah, and then maybe they click on that and that brings them to the electronic service.
Well, you can also,
Yeah.
we can all put a link on the site, on
Okay.
the planning commission actually does
Mhm.
have their page.
Yes, yeah.
I already talked to IT, we can absolutely set up a POCD,
Website.
not a website, but a web page
Like a shell,
under the
yeah,
town
okay.
site.
Mhm.
You'll get your your own website, sorry guys. I also talked to IT, I know we were talking about a deposit for all of the documents that
Yeah.
we're kind
Yeah.
of working on in internal library. Yes, I can do it, but there's one catch on it, if I do it
Yeah.
from my end, is everyone has to send it to me, which I'm totally fine with. And I can put in the share folder, then everyone has a link to that folder, and each time you send me something, I pop it in the folder. When
We-
you access the link, you can go onto
We
OneDrive.
couldn't restrict it to the members of the subcommittee to,
I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to allow you
Yeah.
to deposit to it at the moment.
Right.
So far, I know I absolutely can keep it all. You can get a link and you can all look at everything.
Okay.
I was talking with Dan, he was supposed to get back to me. I'm gonna have to remind him, Dan. He watches the videos on occasion, so let me follow up
Okay.
with him. Because
Okay.
I know for a fact now, after having my first conversation, that I could absolutely do it, give you guys a link that you could do it. But it would add an extra step of actually sending it to me.
And just to clarify, was that so the option of us just like setting something up independently that was ill-advised, or is it just like if we wanted?
If you want to,
To
if that's
be-
the easier way to do it, it's not necessary. It's just I don't have a Dropbox account.
Okay.
I have my OneDrive account, and as far as I can tell with OneDrive, I can't have it so certain people can add to it.
right.
I can
Okay.
always do it so you can access it, but I
Okay.
can't have it so you people can add to it.
Okay, thank you. So, Mark, you had set up like a Google Drive, right?
Yeah, no, I just set up a drive
yeah,
just for us
Just
to
just
share.
for the three of us working like on the review, but if it's not problematic for us to use that just as an internal space, then to keep you from having to do even more work.
Yeah.
As long as there's
Yeah.
no,
Like
as long as it's just a resource.
synchronous collaboration,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, it's
You know.
just a document repository.
Because if you
Yeah,
start having conversations and including, and
sure.
we just don't want it to turn into a meeting.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, no, I
Right.
understand.
Yeah,
That's all
you know,
for
it's,
sure.
it's just to
Yeah.
put like,
Mhm.
just any
Different
resources,
studies you come up with.
studies, any
Yeah.
articles, any just random notes about our thoughts on the articles, not like to communicate with each other, but that's really the goal of it, though, just to like have a place where we can so that we can, during the meetings, we can go back and reference our thoughts, so they're organized.
Can I be added to this?
Yes.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. Okie doke. So yeah, so then really quickly, just going back to that, I think sounds like we're all on the same page. Like we could use the spring to hammer the stuff out, but also like get this online piece of it going, and that will probably also help us get the word out, so that, you know,
I'd like to get at
late
least
summer.
some form of pulse of the community, you know, I mean, I think informally we have some ideas,
Yeah,
but
yeah, for
we'd
sure.
really just to hear some other ideas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, yeah, so I mean, maybe I might need to move this around a little bit, but I think also it more or less, I just might need to move the website piece over one, but otherwise, these brackets seem reasonable to folks, or, okay.
Do you think we could do like an open house format where like, I don't know, we can hold it in like at the library or something, and people can come in and like just talk to us?
That's what I imagined, like our kickoff, like public meeting would be an open house, because then by then we'd have the data analyzed, and usually it's like there are like stations, and it's like land use and transportation, housing, and you could be at the transportation booth, and people are talking to you, and they're giving you ideas, and you're answering questions, and it's informal. It's not like a public meeting where people are, you know, shredding or standing up there like giving, you know, testimony, but it's just I think that like can work well as a way to, like, an entry point into more substantial, like,
definitely, and that'll just
collaborative
help us like
work.
gauge the temperature on how people feel about things, and then we could I think that would be a great jumping off point.
Yeah, and then we could say, and come to the, like, surely you have more to, like, say about this. You clearly care about this town. Please come to our visioning session. We're having it here, and there's gonna be a lot more, you know, other ways to get involved. So we can, if we have some, like, materials that Canva will create beautifully for us, then, you know, I think that we can share that information, start sharing that information sooner than later. Okie doke.
So is there any?
Okay. Anything else?
I guess, what do we need to do first, right?
Right, so I think next, well, the next thing that I would like to do is start to reach out to folks. So thank you both for, it sounds like I came in late, but all the research you're doing to, like, you know, benchmark the existing plan. I think that's all great. We should be doing our own stuff, but I think it would be also just an extra layer of, like, verifying information from the commissioners who have, at least in theory, been, like, you know, put in charge of these different action items. And so I just drafted a letter. This is, you know, it's not precious or sacred, so please slash it and make suggestions. I threw it together kind of quickly. I'll just read it out, whatever. I'll just read it out loud. So, you know, my name's Courtney Knapp. I'm a member of the Brookfield Planning Commission. I'm writing on behalf of our commission regarding our efforts to update the town's plan of conservation and development. As you may know, the Planning Commission is in its early stages of updating the POCD, which was last updated in March 2016. It's a critical document presenting a vision and action plan to guide the community's development over the course of the coming decade. Moreover, municipalities are required to have an active POCD to access and be eligible for, I need to add that, certain state programs and financial incentives. I hope that's accurate. That's a question, so the way I described that, but I wanted to underscore that this isn't just like piece of paper that's going to sit there. As we've talked about, we need to have it for lots of reasons. So we're going to be leading this process to update the plan over the next 18 months. As a first step, we're assessing the completion of the goals articulated in the current plan. And here's the link. In the plan, your commission was identified as being a lead on X, Y, and Z, and just like give it back to them, the language, and that might, some people might, sounds like maybe not be super familiar, you know, with it, depending on the commission, and so it will also maybe be a reminder, you know, of what folks, at least in theory, had agreed to in the prior, and just trying to get, like, have them tell us, confirm to us, like, confirm our research that we're doing. Is this complete or not, or, you know, has it not been started? And then anything else they might want to say about it, And that's just really as a way to like get a conversation, if they want to start, you know, at this point going with these different folks. You know, this is where they've been over the last 10 years. And then I just wanted to remind them that, you know, over the next few months, we're going to be also engaging stakeholders and figuring out our strategy, and so we hope that they will continue to be a part of that moving forward without identifying any structure, you know, but just to say, like, we hope that you will participate as we move forward and and kind of come up with new opportunities and think about Brookfield over the next 10 years. So that's kind of where I landed. But
I think it's very
yeah.
good.
Okay.
I think we should put an expectation of when we expect to have a response there.
Okay, sure.
And I don't know what that would be reasonable. I guess what,
Well,
yeah.
I think here I had given us some time, like through the end of May to like get have all of these conversations. And so, but it would be great, you know, to give them a date sooner than that. You know, the idea is like finishing this by the end of May. So
and then the type of response we're hoping to get. So you're going to list the different areas. So it could be whatever commission they were referenced in these certain
and
areas.
then like what were the action items? Yeah,
Right.
the strategies.
And are we looking for like what are we looking for? I guess. As an answer, maybe a few sentences. Hopefully, I guess
I guess I
probably
was like
difficult to
vague.
answer.
I mean, I think I hope that we'll all figure this out together.
Right.
But it sounded like at the planning commission meeting a couple of weeks ago, you know, we're gonna do this benchmarking. We've got a template. It could be as simple as like, these are all the action items, and are they complete? Like, in progress, complete, no, and that's like its thing. But then we don't necessarily need to include all that context in the new plan, but it's just for our reference. It's more of like just me getting to meet them and like have a discussion with them. But if they want to give us more information, or maybe they have like you know, photos, I didn't say that, but we'll take whatever information they want to give, but it'll probably be pretty simple, like what it ends up getting translated into, in my mind. But it could be more complex if we want it to be.
And of course, the more we ask, the longer it'll take for them to respond.
That's
to
true.
us, right?
So I mean, I could.
I mean, I think we have to give you know, some commissions like ours are monthly too.
Yes.
Where you want to give them at least a couple
months,
months in order to respond.
Well, then, I mean, in which
If we can,
case, then I would have to look at our calendar to see like when our May meetings are, but as like a last possible, like we would want to.
Well, ours are the beginning.
So it's
Right, the
May
beginning,
2nd.
May 2nd, and then this is, what's the third Thursday, is the 16th. So, I mean, we could say before May 2nd. Do you have an idea?
Just to Scott's point, some commissions do only meet monthly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the sooner we can, like conservation, for example, meets the first week of or first Wednesday of the month.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're one who I know want to provide some feedback.
Okay,
so.
good. So if we got, like, if I sent these emails out, like, Monday, and said,
Well,
do
yeah.
you think like giving them a couple of,
it-
like, to say, like, by early May, if you would be able to give us some feedback?
By the
or we
first
can
week
have
of
a
May,
yeah,
yeah.
because we're meeting
Yeah.
on, you
Just
know.
to give them an opportunity to have a meeting.
Yeah,
too,
for
Yeah.
sure.
And not just have the chair be the only person who has
Right.
it. I would ask if it's a land use.
Yeah.
To CC, well, actually, it doesn't matter which commission. I would ask that when you send it out,
Yep, CC.
whoever the staff member is
Sure.
also. So sometimes it's me, sometimes it's another person,
Yeah.
like I don't staff WPCA, for example, but
Okay.
you might wanna staff, you know, CC Allison on it or something like
Okay.
that.
Oh, I guess
Just-
that means I'll be getting one of these letters.
Probably, yeah. Hello. You don't know me, but yeah, allow me to introduce
I'll get
myself.
back to you soon.
Yeah, so a couple of months, and like,
Mhm.
you know, if anyone wants to like sit down with us and chat in that interim, I have a flexible schedule, and you know, I don't want to put either of you on the spot, but if either of you want to be part of that, like, I can, you know, we can. I didn't. I was a little. You might have noticed as I've been emailing you, I've been just emailing you individually because I've been worried about this quorum thing, because with 3 of us, right, on an email, that is a quorum. So that's just one thing to think about with the CCing, but I was planning to like, with all of the like all the categories that you had like signed up for,
Yeah.
at least to CC you on them, and then if they say like, yes, I wanna meet with Aga, then you can say, no, I don't wanna do it, but if you do, then I don't wanna step on your toes, yeah. But that was kinda what I was thinking, yeah.
Mhm.
And so just getting these out feels like at first an important like next step to me. It's just
Mhm.
like getting that ball rolling.
And I think we'll get some feedback too as a result of
Right.
that, as to what we should be doing going forward as well.
Yeah,
you know?
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, and like, yeah, exactly. So it's like not
Mhm.
just how did we do the last 10 years, but let's
Mhm.
start this conversation now, and we'll be hopefully tapping you, you know.
It's gonna be more of a
your
burden for
ideas.
some commissions than others
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
'Cause they're more involved.
Well, good thing is if I send out the emails like early next week, then I won't feel bad following up a few times, and
Mhm.
if they don't respond, then they, you know, we
Mhm.
can only do what we can do, but
Mhm.
it'll give me time to.
So we'll send
Right.
it to the chairs of each of the commissions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and Greg sent me that, like, that
Yeah.
contact list, yeah,
Mhm.
so it would be the chairs of the commission and then the staff member, yeah, I think that's a good
To
idea.
make sure it gets on an agenda too.
Ah,
Yes.
That's why I'm saying
Okay.
the staff
Yes.
member, because
Yep.
they're normally the one.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
I know we had correspondence, and I would hate for it to get lost in the
Mhm.
shuffle
Sure,
or go
yeah.
into spam for some chairperson because they've never gotten an email from you.
Right.
But we've gotten emails from them, so.
Okay, yeah, no, that's a really good point, yeah. So then, do folks feel, I'll make the edit to add the date of like May, and maybe I might,
Mhm.
one more small thing, let's see.
Elaborate on type of response that we're
Yeah,
looking at.
okay. Right, yeah, cause I'm a little bit vague here, so I could say like, it could be as simple as like you just telling us like what is the status, is complete, in progress or not, if you
Or
wanna,
provide
yeah,
additional
and if you want to-
documentation.
If you want to
Mhm. Yeah.
elaborate any certain circumstances.
right, exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, so I'll wordsmith that a little bit,
Mhm.
and then if folks feel okay with it, then I can get started on that early next week.
How familiar you think everybody in all these commissions know the POCD? They know what it is, and
It depends on which commission.
yeah,
Yeah.
some more than others, I'm
Some
sure.
more than, I can assure you that zoning is aware of it,
Yeah.
I
Right.
can assure you planning is aware of it, obviously.
Right.
Conservation is what I meant to say.
Yeah.
WPCA is aware of it,
Mhm.
Economic Development Commission
Mhm.
is aware of it.
Yep.
Board of Selectmen is aware of it, I
Mhm.
didn't know if you
Yeah.
were sending,
Maybe we should attach it with the email.
I don't know.
Well, I think
if it
yeah,
was.
you
Or,
insert the URL.
put in a link.
A link to the plan.
Yeah.
Yes, I had
Mhm.
just a little, I need
Oh,
to
yeah,
add
yeah,
it, but
yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Yeah, I wanted to link that and also give them like page numbers so that we can, and maybe
Mhm.
that's overkill, but like, cause they like, sounds like, yeah, maybe not everyone is fully, aware of
Mhm.
what their commission is, in charge, and so just to be able to, in case they've never seen it before, giving you the benefit of the doubt, you can go right to it and, see what it says, right?
Or maybe, yeah, sometimes you
Maybe.
just have to
Give it to
the
them,
people on
yeah.
the platter.
I could add it as a PDF as well, if that's something that I'm.
I think this is a good introduction
Yeah.
to everything that's taking place.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
it's just getting started, yeah, so just to whet their interest, okay, great, so then, and then beyond that, just really quickly, I know, taking up a lot of time here, but I think the other things that we want to try to wrap up in the next couple of months would be any benchmarking of the other plans, that's other towns or the state, which I saw you have some notes here, and,
Just
yeah,
highlights.
and Westcog,
Mhm.
their plan, and so, folks need to remind me, I know, you were working on that piece of it, but I forget who else from the minutes had said they were taking a look at some of the other
I-
communities, so,
I
yeah.
think, Mike
I think it was Mike,
was gonna
yeah.
look at,
Oh, was he?
I
Okay.
think so,
I think so.
Okay.
so maybe we just need to,
Yeah.
like, touch base with him
Next,
at the
in-
next session and
yeah,
see
in
if
2
he's,
weeks.
yeah. And then go from there, yeah, and then, like, in our April meeting, really start to get into the nitty-gritty with strategy around outreach and engagement. And so what I can do, if I send something to you, Laura, are you able to email out to everyone, like in this commission without it? Okay, so I have this public participation handbook that's just like a series of workbook, like it's a workbook. We can decide if we want to use it or not, but maybe I'll send it to you, and then if you can send it out to everyone, then we can next session get together and see, do we want to like use this to hammer things out? And if so, then that'll take us like from A to Z in terms of, you know, us laying out, you know, what we're doing and why and how. So
One thing I've noted looking at a couple, including the state, is, you know, we're trying to formulate a plan for what the content will be, right? Like, what areas do we want to cover? What, you know, what topics are going to be important? There's also, there seems to be a variety of formats and how these things are laid out even, you know? Some, like, I'm reading some of them, they're almost more of like a marketing document, you know? Which I wasn't expecting, I have to admit, you know? I'm not sure, I don't know, do you know any background as to why that may be? Or what the strategy some towns may take in doing so?
Some towns prefer a really straightforward, this is our goal,
Right.
this is who's responsible.
Right.
And some like a little bit more visionary document.
Yeah.
Gives you, we have a little bit more flexibility
Right.
on what is consistent with the POCD, because there's nothing that really is inconsistent with the POCD.
Right.
It's a little bit more.
Like Danbury, they call it like innovate. I was reading that.
Well, there's also new trends
Innovate,
too.
yeah.
So those are probably the newer ones, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's from last year, yeah.
So
there's new what? I'm sorry. What
That's
did you
a
say?
trend more like
Oh,
newer
new trends,
planning
yeah, yeah.
documents to have a little bit more of a, I'm gonna call it a visionary approach,
Right.
rather than like a meat and potatoes approach.
Yeah.
It's like almost, it's got like branded. It's got
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
exactly.
yeah.
And it's got right. And so that, I mean, that's a question for us. You know, that's part of the structure conversation. I think we should figure out for ourselves. Do we want it to just be like nuts and bolts? Do we want it to be more visual, more vision? You know, more visionary, and so on and so forth, and just get on the same page with that so that we can go.
That's what I tried to
Yeah.
figure out with this. What
Right.
is
And
this?
What is the?
Well, the existing.
Oh, yeah,
plan, You know, like,
Mhm.
because it felt like.
I think making it visual though, and not necessarily making it a marketing document, but you know, making it engaging for the public does help get people more involved. You know,
Totally.
so I think it does. There is that added benefit to it. So I think that is something we should focus on.
And I'm looking at
little
it from
more
a whole different viewpoint. I'm looking at it, well, something has come to our board and commission, and we've got to refer to this document to see if it's consistent. Where do I find that thing in this document?
Right.
Some of these ones, I don't know how these towns can do that, you know? Because it's sort of all over the place, you know? The format is very loose, you know, and how they categorize certain areas, and the wording is somewhat vague, in what they do. Yeah, so that's when I'm looking at the different towns, that's the other thing I'm looking at, is just like, how are they laying these plans out, you know?
Yeah.
I think making a distinction between like the visuals and the actual
Substance.
verbal context in
Yeah.
it. You know, I think like the substance of it should be pretty much completely straightforward. But if you want, but visuals that complement substance and maybe point towards something that's visionary, that could be the way we do it to just to make it easy to read.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could, I think, find a way to still make it inspired without it losing its like useful, like its utility.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, yeah, in the next meeting or so, you know, well, next few meetings, I think we've got some time in this, like, laid out to really start to think about that, and to maybe try to, like, think about how we're gonna strike that balance. In my experience, I mean, I'm of, like, both minds, because I totally agree with you. It's like, you don't want it to be so loose that it's actually hard for it to be a guiding document, but I think you don't want it to be so rigid that it for like, or like so just like technical
Read it like
that
the
it's
regulations.
uninspired,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
like people are like,
Yeah.
like that's when it sits on the shelf, you know, like we want
Right.
to get people excited and like want to be a part
Mhm.
of this, and so that'll just take a little bit of thought, but yeah, I mean we've got the right people in the room to get there, and yeah, so I'm excited to kind of get the ball rolling a little bit more. Do you, was there anything that you wanted to say about that right there?
Well, that's
'Cause
sort of,
interesting.
it
Yeah,
touches
uh-huh.
into what I was just saying
Mhm.
as far as the structure. You know, they have these very broad categories that they use, and then they try to apply. This is just the implementation, and that's what I've been doing, just try to cut to the you know,
Mhm.
the root of all the entire document, is to see what the broad categories are. But yeah, they have these loose categories: stewardship of resources, thriving economy, healthy people and places, housing for current and future residents, connected and inclusive communities. And then they have a listing of those different measures that they're, you know, they're hopeful
Yeah.
to achieving for the state. This is at the state level.
Right.
And I won't read them all, but they're covering a lot of the areas that you might expect. There's some climate stuff, there's housing things, more environmental, some bike things, arts, green space, infrastructure, transit, diversity of Connecticut businesses. I thought this was increase the proximity between childcare, medical, transit, workforce development, education, and employment opportunities within activity centers to foster more affordable living, which is good. Agricultural stuff, biodiversity, yeah, some things we might expect. I was thinking how, you know, this, you know, if this is the broad state one, does that, you know, sometimes
down, yeah.
filter down into what you might want to do, or help develop some sort of a framework at the local level.
Is this something that you could send to us so that we could put it in the
Yes,
drive so
probably.
that we could all
Yeah.
take a look at
Yeah,
it?
this will
Yeah.
probably be-
Mhm.
yeah,
Thank you for
certainly.
doing that. That's
I
really,
was-
because it just came out, so that's, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I want to, I haven't looked at the draft the draft state, but I wanted to, but this will be great. I mean, just hearing you talk through it briefly, a couple things do jump out. I mean, because we do, on some level, we want to have this alignment, right, between
Right.
the state and this, and so, the climate questions and sustainability, and then you said like inclusivity, you know, kind of social equity, environmental justice, like none of that comes up in our current plan, and I don't you know, I don't know if that's just because those issues aren't present, which I doubt, but they just might not have been priorities at that time, but certainly like the climate adaptation kind of resilience stuff feels like an obvious piece that we would want to expand to include, whether you know, and then I think through some of the demographic analysis, economic analysis, we can talk about social equity, whether that becomes like a part of the, you know, the vision for this town, which would be great, you know, that would make me really happy, but we also want to see what people are saying, but I think that we can kind of like get to some of those issues through the analysis, if not like through a shared vision, and so that'll be really great to look at, and I think
it's something to
help us in the
consider
right
as
direction.
we try to formulate our framework, you know,
For sure.
whether we
Yep.
want to use it or not.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would, you know, this layout of these broad categories.
No,
I'm
no,
not sure of that one,
yeah.
but, you know.
I don't think we need to necessarily adopt them, but
Yeah.
we might be able to just kind of like take their categories and almost create like
Our own.
a similar table where it's
Yeah.
like, here are your, you know,
Mhm.
elements of your vision, and this is what our plan is now saying to do, and they kind of fit within, you know,
Mhm.
and maybe there are things that we thought of that they haven't, and
Sure.
maybe there are things that, you know, they have that we're not kind of taking on, but just to show that we've like thought about the alignment, even if we haven't like fused it together, right? Cool. Thank you. Thanks for doing that. Yeah.
So what do we need to, what do we need to do, I guess? We got the letter.
The letter.
What else do we need to do, I guess, the next couple weeks before the next meeting?
So I'll send Laura the public participation handbook,
Okay.
and the workbook, which is like just a shorter version of it if you don't want to read the whole book, although it's very like quick read, I gotta say. And then if folks just want to like kind of glance through that stuff at least between now and our next meeting, then when we get together, we can just like jump right into a conversation. Like we can maybe like even compare our notes and just start to work through it and do something a little more, you know, interactive where we're coming up with something.
And continue benchmark.
And continue yes,
Yep.
and continue
Yep.
that work, yeah, for sure.
And we have a
Yep.
couple things that are listed in April. Is there anything we need to do between now and, I guess our next meeting in April?
The
And-
planning commission's meeting in April?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
or our subcommittee meeting.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it would be great if at our April meeting, you know, we can, in addition to talking about the outreach, maybe talk a little bit, you know, start to hammer out a little bit more. What is the overarching, gonna be like the framework for the plan? So these are gonna be our sections, you know, these are the topics that we want to make sure that we include, and so all of that, like any additional benchmarking of other communities would be great, like if that happens between now and then, just so that we can kind of just come to an agreement around some of that in April. And but otherwise things feel like they feel a little nebulous, like we can be working on different, you know, just thinking and kind of like I mean, just coming up with ideas that you want to bring to the space around what do you think would be good ideas around how we could like engage people, you know, whether you look at the workbook or not. Do you have ideas about like branding or identity? Like, do you have an idea? What, you guys know this town much better than I do. I've only been here for 3 years, so like, you know, you got your finger on the. So, what do you think would be? You know, what's the catch? You know, we could just start like brainstorming that stuff. And so, as
So
you
you
that
feel we
idea-
should have a slogan like Danbury with Innovate on our document?
I think if my feeling
That
is
one's taken.
I
You
d-
can't use that
yeah,
one.
no, I mean. Yeah, I mean, maybe it has something to do with like the time frame, you know what I mean? It doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, but like I something other than just like the plan of conservation and development, which feels it is what it is, but it feels it reads as a little uninspired. And I think if we want to catch like younger people and we want to like really be bringing people in, then we make it a little bit snazzier in terms of just like an identity, so that they're like, yes, I actually want to be a part of, like, I want to participate in this. Like, I actually have
Yeah.
ideas, and I live here, and, you know, it's not.
Yeah, I don't know
not
if we
just my
want to
grand-
solicit the public to give us a name for
No,
our
no, no,
document.
no, no.
We may not
but
like some of the
we want to
responses.
think about who the public is, right? Like,
Might be asking for trouble
it's
there.
like, yeah, no, I would not want to do that. But like, we want to come up with something that doesn't alienate people.
Maybe we should.
Maybe we should crowdsource the title. I mean, I'm always open for
I
like
think-
Maybe that
democratic.
should be like one of the questions on our little.
Yeah. On a survey. What should we call this thing?
Yeah.
Or like, what's one word you would use to describe Brookfield? Yeah, or I don't know. Like, there could be like a question that's not like that, but that could give us ideas.
I
Or
think- I
like,
think
what's
maybe
something? Yeah,
Multiple choice, I think, would be.
Right. So, and then if we have multiple choice, then yeah, we just want to think about what are some of our options we're going to give folks. You know, this is jumping ahead a little bit, but I've done a lot of work with this planning community engagement expert named James Rojas. He's in California, but he works all over the world, and he uses this technique called Place It, where it's very out of the box, but it works like amazingly. Where basically he has people build these models out of like little found objects, and rather than say like, okay, build your ideal, like, you guys sit down and charrette your, like, community, and you're all gonna, like, figure it out here and negotiate. He just says, okay, build a model of your favorite childhood memory. It's like, has nothing to do, and people just, like, tap into this, like, emotional space that opens up some really beautiful conversations. I'm not saying that we want to do that necessarily, although I've got all the supplies if we want to, and it's pretty fun because, like, kids can do it, and like, everyone can do it, and, you know, nobody gets asked, like, after they're 10 years old, like, about their childhood, and so it actually can be this, like, interesting entry point. And I mean, yeah, there are all these different ways that I think we can get at both the what do people want to see from, like, a, you know, from a, I guess, like, a land use and a technical, you know, perspective, built environment perspective, but also, like, get at what are the values that are, like, driving people, and what, you know, what are the ideas that people want to, like, coalesce around. And I don't know that that's gonna be the same answer for someone who's, like, 22 as someone who's 75, and so just trying to create that space that, like, people all feel like they have an opportunity to share some of that, and they're not getting, it's not a zero-sum game where their idea is gonna get, like, win or lose and other things are gonna get shut out. Like, we'll have to make some decisions, certainly at a certain point, like, these are our priorities, but I think in the early stages it should just be, like, generative and getting, you know, people engaged and excited, and then from there, if we have, like, a good infrastructure, then there'll be lots of places to plug in and have lots of different types of conversations. So that's the last thing I would say. Like, we could really get creative with this and have fun. And
Okay. Sounds good.
and if you guys want, I could bring in, if you want to, like, see how that works, like, in one of our strategy sessions, I'll bring my box in. Yeah, you're gonna build your childhood memory. I would love to do that with you guys. It's really fun. It's actually really fun. Yeah, you're gonna look at it like, what do you want me to do? Because that's what everybody does, and then you'll start picking at it, and in, like, 5 minutes, you'll just have this, like, the most beautiful thing, and you'll be talking about, like, your grandmother's garden, you know, which,
Okay.
yeah, it's really fun.
Do that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
If you're open to it, yeah.
Why not?
That'd be really fun. Just need to get that stuff from my office. But you're
Laura's
looking like
looking-
this is
I'm really concerned about this group.
I would just say that this is very common. That
Do
reaction.
we have to lie on a
but,
couch when we do this?
yeah. What's that? What'd you say?
Lie on a couch?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah. There's an emotional politics to all of this stuff. That's why people get invested or not. And so, you know, I just think that the more that we can, like, you know, treat people with, like, the wholeness of their experience, and it's not just about strategy, it's also about bringing people together around this thing, and it could be an opportunity, you know, for community building as well as, like, information gathering. So we just want to think about.
Well, that could be a
how to do
very
that.
positive thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it could be fun, yeah. That's
Just
it.
have a couple of logistical questions.
Of course,
Do
yeah.
you have a specific meeting within that time frame that you want Greg to weigh in on this, or is that something are you going to be dealing with Greg on your own?
I've had a meeting with Greg, and I think I'll be, like, reaching out to him certainly once I start to, like, send these emails, because he'll be CC'd on some of them. And so I hadn't really thought about him coming to like
Yeah, I
a
wasn't
meeting
sure
yet.
because
Yeah, I don't know. I
he'd
guess
weigh
it's
in on everybody's section and so
I think-
because he has so much.
I think
here.
he would be a very good person to talk to.
Yeah, we can summon him.
And
he is
now-
like semi-retired, right? Or
Greg is more
yeah,
than happy to come to a meeting
Yeah.
with enough advance.
advance notice.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what I was-
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was
Yeah.
looking, you know,
And provide whatever kind of assistance. I
Okay.
know
Yeah.
EDC, he's the staff person who goes to EDC,
Right.
so when you contact them, works very closely with the
Mhm.
Economic
Mhm.
Yeah.
Development Commission, so he will be included in many
Yeah.
different ways,
Mhm.
so,
I just didn't know if, you know, with his time being.
so limited.
Yeah.
Yeah, or if, you know, he has free time and he's got a vacation for 3 weeks. And, you know,
Right.
you guys told me you're meeting, doing this once a month, you might wanna try to.
That's true.
I'd like more of that data, I know
Yeah,
that.
that's what I thought.
Yes.
His report, it was a fantastic
Yeah,
report.
yeah. Mhm.
Mark, when you were sharing, you know, early on, some of the things you were talking about,
Mhm.
transportation-wise, infrastructure-wise, is Ralph used to come to our meetings.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
again, even a regular meeting, just
Yeah.
that it's on the agenda.
We could invite
Ralph's
Ralph.
free for
Yeah,
half an
I know.
hour. I'm
Oh,
just
yeah.
wondering, just to speed things along with the person who's here and.
Instead of just sending it to certain commissions too, that's why I was starting to say
Mhm.
that staff
Mhm.
member in
Mhm.
charge,
Yeah.
because I knew it would get Greg in on
Yeah,
it.
yep.
Public Works,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
there's certain things like WPCA, it's its own animal, you know, that they handle as well. But if I don't know which commissions you're gonna send it to,
I can, yeah, maybe before I send
Coordinate with
anything,
some
we can
staff.
coordinate a little bit, yeah, and you can let me, like, help me
just to
figure
make
out.
sure
who-
everybody's.
We don't have a breakout yet of the different sections of the current POCD and those which you intend to reach out to for them, right?
Not
Yeah,
yet, but
not
it's
yet.
basically in the plan, like,
Yeah,
in the
it's
plan,
those-
just
it's the
listed. Yeah,
implementation
so I was
piece.
gonna just kinda go through
Right,
that and make a
okay.
list, but maybe before I send the messages, I'll just
Mhm.
coordinate with Laura a little bit to figure out, like, who,
Mhm.
make sure that I'm not missing anybody.
And you could copy
and
me in
you as
on
well,
anything that's
yeah.
going out, I appreciate
Okay,
it too.
for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that question. Yeah, Greg and Laura and I had one conversation. He gave me a lot of good information about how the previous, POCD updates have gone, and he did offer, to be a resource. So, I mean, maybe it makes sense. Well, he'll know that we're working when he starts getting CC'd on things, but I wonder if, maybe not like this next meeting, because we're just gonna really be getting started, but once we have something like in draft form in terms of a structure to be able to get him to weigh in on, like maybe in 2 or 3 months, in 2 months or so, that would be, if he's available, a good time to bring him in to like talk to all of us instead of just communicate over email. I don't know.
Did we find out why he wasn't acknowledged on the last document? I was curious about that.
No, I did not, you know what, I neglected to ask.
I was,
Although that's a
doesn't
valid
matter, but,
question.
yeah, it just
Yeah.
seems odd to me, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of acknowledgements, maybe we can reach out to some of the people that are listed
In the acknowledgements.
in the
Yeah.
acknowledgements.
Some of
Well,
them are definitely the chairs of other commissions.
Or they were
Yeah.
in,
Or were, yeah.
10 years ago, yeah.
Right.
That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you would want to get the present, I think you'd want to speak to the present
Mhm.
commissions. They're really in a position, they're the ones that were in a position at least more recently, to implement some of this stuff,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, right.
And, they may not know the whole history from going back 9 or 10 years, but
Right.
they can speak currently.
Yeah, or maybe,
Yeah.
if not, they can maybe point us to like where we can find that information.
Yeah.
And maybe they can talk about, like, your background on the vision itself, you know what I mean?
I think we want to make it clear, though, I think we'd want to work with the present-day commissioners and then have them, if they want to reach back, because they would know the history of their own commission, at least to some extent, I would think, right? And maybe they would reach out. We could point
Maybe-
out, like, this is who was on the board at the time or something, yeah,
Yeah.
if you don't know.
Or maybe say like these folks were like referenced in the acknowledgements
Yeah.
and maybe they'll say like, like let's sit down and talk, and we need to like have Ryan, like we should get Ryan there, too, because he was really part of this. I think you're right. Like, this is a really important list. Now, this actually just made me think of one last thing that I didn't mention already. When I met with Greg and Laura, he had, and we talked about this, he had suggested, that we start reaching out to Steve Dunn and like making,
Mhm.
making these connections. And so I don't know if, as the chair, and you
Mhm.
have, these folks very well, I know that they're aware of it, but
Steve's aware
in a
of it,
more
yeah.
like formal way,
Mhm.
like if I'm emailing commissioners, maybe you want to,
I
or I
could-
can,
I could
but
re- I
you could
could
reach out and
reach
just
out
say
to
like,
them, yeah.
look, this is like
Right.
basically coming down the pike, and
Mhm.
we want you to, be
Yeah, at this
people
point, I
part of
don't
it.
think we have anything to ask of them aside,
No,
maybe
yeah.
perhaps where they're mentioned in the
in the acknowledgement.
the POCD,
Mhm.
the old one. But right now, I think that's the extent of what
Yeah.
our question to them is, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, just
But,
like,
but yeah, I know
just to get it
Steve's-
on their radar.
I know
Yeah,
Steve's aware of it,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I know,
Mhm.
yeah.
I think you'll be surprised, I think they're all, most of them are gonna be very aware of it.
Yeah.
It's come
Yeah.
up in
Mhm.
different agendas, and it's come
Mhm.
up on different conversations,
Good.
that, you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I would be really surprised if people don't know in the boards and commissions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the regular public, probably half of them have never seen the document, to be
Right.
perfectly honest.
Right.
Okay. Cool, that's all I got for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anything else do we need to cover here? We're all clear with things that we need to do between now and the next?
Yes.
and-
Yes, we do.
Yeah? We're good? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion?
Anybody
Made.
want a second?
I'll second.
Anybody want to argue that
One.
motion?
Okay.
Okay. All ayes?
Aye.
All right,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you, everybody.